Yeah, welcome back to another Cataclysm Class Set card review. Today it's all about Druid, and this one definitely seems less like a predefined archetype than all the other sets we've seen so far. Kind of a mixed bag for Druid, although I do think a few cards which are probably intended to help out Druid's quest, actually filling the board turn after turn. But let's do a little reminder here on Bashana Rune Totem. This is the legendary we saw revealed initially on day 1. 7 mana 4/4 battle cry, get 3/2/2 treants, carve 12 mana worth of nature spells into them. So basically those are 1 mana 2/2s. They get a random spell that's going to like fill that 12 mana over 3 cards. So you might get like an 8, a 2, and a 2, because that adds up to 12, or a 5 and a 5 and a 2, so on. Some random mix and match. And these nature spells can be both Druid and otherwise, I think. So really kind of an absolute mixed bag here on results, which, you know, it does let you cheat a lot of mana, but my biggest concerns, as we talked about last time, is just when it's random nature spells like that, it's who knows what you're going to get, right? You just have no clue what they're going to do. They don't always align in the same direction for a given game state, so they'll often just be kind of wasted or weird. Also, you're just spending 7 mana up front to do that, so the overhead on this is crazy high to just play a 7 mana 4/4, which, yes, I know Druid can ramp, but still, you could spend that 7 mana on something else bigger and more immediately impactful. So that's what makes me really nervous here, is like, yeah, I could imagine some game states where this lines up beautifully and, you know, they all hit something kind of cool and good, and like you can afford to play the 4/4, and then you have these crazy swing turns down the road. I can imagine lots of other board states where there's no window to play this safely because you feel like you have to keep up, and then if you do just take a flyer on it, maybe the results don't really pan out. So ultimately, you know, I'm not going to say this is unplayable, because I do think, you know, at the bottom of a big rampy Druid list, you might just throw this in because you don't have a lot of other things to work with, and it's just kind of a neutral card. And I mean neutral obviously in the sense of like it's not really doing anything, but it's just kind of one of those big dumb legendaries that like sort of works. It sort of does something for you. So yeah, I think it's possible that it gets played. I just, you know, it's not going to be the star of the show. It's certainly not a deck centerpiece sort of card at all. I think it's just at best kind of okay, and at worst kind of unplayable. So we also saw the Wizened Wild Speaker. I did like this one pretty well. 5 mana 3/7 taunt. It introduces this kind of if you didn't play a minion last turn idea, which we're going to see again in this video, then you get to refresh 3 mana crystals. So this is, you know, kind of a 2 mana 3/7 if played on turn 5, and I think that's actually fine. I think Druid decks in particular are weaving together spells and minions often enough that sometimes just having a 3/7 taunt for 2 mana is going to feel worthwhile. Just, you know, something to throw down, slow down the opponent while you're accelerating another game plan. Even something like Imbue Druid that has a lot of spells will easily put together some turns where, you know, maybe it's fine to get a little extra taunt and safety down with this 3/7 body. So I think this one's actually pretty good. I think somebody will find a way to make this work. So moving on to some new cards today. Next up, we have the Heartroot Stones. This is a 3 mana nature spell. Draw a card and gain 3 armor. And then if you didn't play a minion last turn, do it again. So once again, seeing that if you didn't play a minion mechanic here. And I like this card again. I think this is actually really nice. So in essence, when this works, which I think, again, will be very often, particularly on turn 2, like sometimes Druid's just hero power on turn 2, right? That's not playing a minion. So you play this on turn 3, you draw 2 cards and gain 6 armor. You know, an Arcane Intellect that also gains 6 armor, sure, I think that's absolutely going to be fine. If it didn't gain the 6 armor, yeah, you wouldn't be super excited about 3 mana draw 2, but 6 armor is really nice. That's going to give you that stabilization against aggro decks, just by a little more time to get into all that juicy late game stuff you want to do as Druid. And the cool thing is too, like, you know, this can be still meaningful later on in the game too, even if you have a big hand already. Just gaining 6 armor sometimes is really nice in a pinch, whether you care about the cards or not. Like, yeah, that's a bonus, but you might care more about the armor, and this still gives you some output that's meaningful. So ultimately, I think the conditionality on these is not difficult for Druid to achieve at all, so I think that's really not a concern, and the output on this is good enough that it looks to me like pretty solid card. I think this is a good one. All right, so next up here is Life Bloom, a big 9 mana nature spell. Restore 8 health to all friendly characters, and then summon 2 random 8 cost minions. I am beyond annoyed that this doesn't cost 8 mana. I bet it did. This is one of those cards where it's like everything's 8s, It had even the word bloom with the two O's in it sideways, it looks like an 8, right? Like, it's got to be 8. Make it 8. But maybe it was too good at 8. They're like, no, it's got to be 9, or we just want to bug Regis. But can I say, regardless of that, I just love cards like this, right? Like, the art is so sick. This is a crazy looking character, like beautiful art, super druidy vibes, and just like big, you know, stabilization card, big defensive, just junk. I love, just awesome card anyway. Is it good though? I think it's close. I think it's actually pretty darn close. You know, obviously we're looking at a ramp class here with Druid. So not necessarily a card you're playing on turn 9. It's coming down perhaps, you know, turn 7 or something, a little more on average for a ramp Druid deck, which, you know, that's important, but it's got that mix of like, yes, it's a random board where the results aren't going to be amazing, but at the same time, you've got a little bit of recovery in there too. So it gives you just that little bit more window to actually get this done. If this were in a class that was just playing it for 9, honestly, I would say no way. 9 is far too slow. It needs to be, frankly, 7 or 8. Druid though, you know, cheating that mana, it gets closer. Now I will say, like, 2 random 8 cost minions is still really tough. You know, if it said 2 random 8 cost minions with taunt, I would be like, ship it, this card's great, Druids will find a way to play this. But when you look at just the regular 8 drop minion pool, and I've accidentally got some spells in here, but ignore those. I don't think we're summoning colossals into play off these random effects, right? They can be randomly generated in hand, but not on board, as I recall. So there is stuff like, you know, you're just going to get like an Athena sometimes, a 6/8. You'll be really happy if you get Asphyxiate on Atlasaurus, but then you'll be really sad if you get Archwitch Willow. You might be okay with a Bone Guard Commander. You might be okay with a Bronze Keeper, although, again, you might want some taunt there. Crumble Crusher is just an 8/6, 7/7, 8/8, right? 6/6s. Like, it's honestly just such a big, wide pool. There's going to be a lot of times you just get some like dead stats, even a Marithra, right? Like, oh, I got a 4/12 and a 3/3. Good God, I'm screwed. That's the real hesitation for this card. If it had some kind of modifier to narrow that pool a little bit, I think I would like it so much more. So, like, the 8 health to friendly characters, right? Not typically going to be super relevant to minions on board. That's pretty much just a face heal you're thinking in many cases. So, like, is 8 face heal enough to sustain the downside of the minion pool risk here? Because it's just like, I can't get a 3/3 and a 5/5 or whatever off my life bloom and expect to win the game. I don't really think so. It's close. I think we'd have to get more ramp than we have now for Druid. I think they'd really have to print some more ramp cards, which I don't know if they're going to do or not. And then it's still just kind of close. You might still want, you know, high cost cards with more reliable outputs. And there are a lot of high cost things to choose from, right? You can just pick bigger, scarier cards. So ultimately, I do think, as much as I want to like this one, it falls a little bit short. But it's so curious to me that it's not an 8 cost card. Should it have been an 8 cost card? Did it start as an 8 cost card? That's what I want to know. And would it be playable as an 8 cost card? I think I would bump it up a star point if it went from 9 to 8, because I think as it stands right now, I just can't get it there, even though I really want to. Moving on here to the Seeding Dragon. This is a 4 mana 4/4 dragon, believe it or not. Taunt and death rattle. Get a random dragon. It costs 2 less, which I mean I like, right? That gives the ability to potentially get a big, high rolly, game swinging sort of dragon at a significant discount. You know, being able to cheat out a big game winner 2 turns earlier is really nice. But obviously, of course, you can also low roll into some cheap dragons, just get, you know, 1 cost dragon and feel like your discount was a bit wasted. That said, I don't think that's necessarily the worst case scenario either, because it's just, you know, tempo. You get a 2 cost dragon, you just play it out. 1 cost dragon, you play it out. Maybe you're not like that heartbroken about it. You still got to do something a little quicker. And then maybe actually in some cases the worst scenario might be getting a sort of middle of the road dragon, just another random 4-drop or something. But, you know, again, the 2 mana discount makes all of the hits feel pretty decent, I think. And, you know, the dragon pool is typically biased towards slightly higher cost things on average. So you are probably going to hit some bigger dragons more often than not that make this feel like it's really good. You know, might get a good play on turn 5 or 6 to sort of follow this up, because this is definitely a little bit of a down play itself. A 4 mana 4/4 taunt is not even competing with, like, you know, the Imbue Divine Shield guy. That feels pretty good to play this probably feels a little sad to play. Now, Druid is already doing some dragon-y stuff. We've got like Marithra Druid's a pretty solid deck these days. It doesn't really have that many like dragon triggers. It's like the Darkskill Broodmother, the 3-drop that refreshes crystals if you're holding a dragon. The rest of it's just dragons. I guess it has Naralex in there to help you cheat out some big dragons. But you know, you don't really need to have dragons in that deck, even though it has a lot of dragons. Its 4-drop slots are Xavius and Elise. Like maybe you could just swap those out for some seeding dragons. I don't really know that feels like an improvement to me though. Just adding random stuff into your pool here off these random dragons as opposed to like targeted options off Elise and Xavius. That's the problem when you look at this card, right? Is like it kind of has to compete against some pretty powerful options in the decks that exist out there. And I don't know that we'd see a bigger commitment to dragons and Druid. I feel like some people have experimented with that a little bit, but not so much. So, you know, it's just one of those cards where like I look at this and I think it looks totally fine. And I think a lot of people will do the same. It's like, yeah, I would play this card. I think it has some good results, but that's not really the right way to assess cards, right? The right way to assess cards is kind of opportunity cost. You know, they're not competing against a vacuum. They're competing against other things. And for instance, when I look at the Dragon Druid deck right now, it's got to compete against Elise and Xavius. And I'm like, yeah, I don't love that. So like, does it have to wait until after a rotation where those cards rotate out? Like, yeah, maybe there's some room for it there, but it's just not a card you're getting super excited about at the end of the day. You're kind of like, yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine, which is a fine place for a card to be, but it's, you know, it's just not going to get the crazy rating that some people might want. All right, so next up here is Ashworm. This is a 1-mana 6/6, which is crazy big. I don't know if we actually ever seen a 1-drop this big. Nothing comes to mind. Marvel Snap kind of does the 1-cost 6-power cards as like their biggest 1-cost cards. So it's familiar in one way or another. I certainly can't remember one. Anyway, this is a beast that starts dormant, and then when your board is full, it awakens. So under normal circumstances, right, like just normal Hearthstone game, generic deck, this would never, ever, 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 ever awaken, right? It would be a 1-mana 6/6 that never actually sees the board. But as I teased earlier, we have Quest Druid right now, and the Druid quest is all about filling your board. And then this is not just a sort of payoff for filling your board, but it also becomes an enabler for filling your board, because dormant minions count for filling your board with Restore the Wild, right? So basically this is a perfect little tool for a Quest Druid where you're not necessarily, that deck's not really about like aggroing out. You know, you're missing your turn 1, you're kind of setting up for these mid-game boards that become these monster threats, particularly once you get your weapon equipped and start, you know, hitting for some crazy stats on those. And this is a great little tool to kind of preemptively load up, because once you start getting into that mid-game stage where you're getting those full boards, maybe turn 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, having a 6/6 down becomes a threat that is, number one, just annoying in its own right. Like, God, I can't leave that 6/6 out, but also it's often staggered a little bit from the rest of your stuff. You might have like a lot of little 1 health stuff filling out the board, and then one bigger guy that can sometimes challenge your opponent's removal a little bit. If they use a small AoE, it might leave behind the Ashworm so that, you know, you get to hit face, take a trade, leave it on board just for the next wave to keep your board full, right? So this is just kind of a guaranteed slot for that first time you hit. A cheap slot any other time, you know, even if you draw this on turn 5, you know, just having that dormant slot out there can still be really helpful for your next hit. Sometimes it might be, you know, on that final board too, where you get the weapon equipped, and this is like an 8/8 right off the bat. So I do think this is a really cool tool for Quest Druid, which is a deck that's, you know, not a meta deck right now by any means, of course, but I have always felt like it's really close. It's really good with the Colossus for Druid this set too. Wicker Fang is really nice in Quest Druid. So I wonder if this card could give Quest Druid that little boost to kind of make it scary. We're going to see another card or two, actually, I think, in this video as well that's helpful. So I would say definitely keep an eye on Quest Druid. This is a very narrow card because it makes no sense otherwise. I just, like, you know, technically some Token Druids might do this, but I don't think it'd be worth it there even. Really, it's like you need to care about filling your board specifically to make this good. So super narrow, but also potentially really high impact. All right, so next up here is Tranquil Clearing. This is a 2-mana, 2 durability location. And I I think maybe this one's also sort of kind of supposed to be a Quest Druid support card. I don't know that it's very good though. It's give a minion +2 health and taunt, and then it falls asleep until the end of your next turn. So a couple things going on here, right? Like this is a buff that you might want to just use on your own stuff. You know, basically play this out early, play a 5-drop later on that's not very good into the board but has some effect you want or something, and it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of exposed here because I'm playing cards that, you know, aren't defensive. Maybe play Marithra later, right? And it's kind of a big 12 health thing that otherwise doesn't do much. Like, okay, now I can kind of force them into my Marithra, force them into some random 5-drop or whatever. Play the Life Bloom spell, get an 8-drop without taunt, give it taunt, right? And it can be this sort of defensive tool. And you don't care about it falling asleep until the end of next turn because it's got taunt. They're going to have to attack into it anyway. You're not planning to attack regardless. Like, yes, you would miss an attack cycle, but you don't care because it's like, well, it's just about giving taunt in this scenario. So, you know, kind of a preemptive Sun Fury Protector, if you will. If you guys remember Sun Fury Protector from way back in the day. I kind of get that, but at the same time, I don't think you're adding a card in your deck and wasting a deck slot for just that effect twice and at 2 mana worth of cost. Like, again, I can magically concoct some scenarios where I'm like, yeah, there's a good board state for that, but it's like, man, the opportunity cost is so high again. You have to, you know, you have to give up some other tool that might just be better for you. So I don't know. Now, the other angle for this card is actually using it as a freeze effect against your opponent's cards, because do note this does not say friendly minion. So you could actually use this as a way to kind of get around a taunt of your opponents where, you know, they have a taunt protecting some other key thing. You give that key thing taunt, even though you're buffing its health, it gives you access. Again, really niche scenario. I think very unlikely that often happens, and the +2 health buff frankly kind of makes that even more annoying when it does. More importantly is like, hey, my opponent summoned, you know, a Kalos off their egg, and I don't have a way to kill this Kalos right now, and I need to buy some time or something, or whatever example, a big 8/8, you know, giant thing. And I don't want it to attack me. So if it falls asleep until the end of your next turn, it can't attack. Did we even talk about what sleep is? Not dormant, but when you first play a minion and it's, you know, in its rested state and unable to attack, it has those Z's popping off its head. That's asleep in Hearthstone. So basically, you would lock it out from attacking for an entire turn. So I guess the question is, like, when you consider all three of those kind of niche scenarios, do they like stack up enough that in the average game you'll have some result you care about? Taunting your own thing, accessing an opponent's minion behind taunt, or freezing one of their minions. Maybe I think like the freeze is the most effective aspect of this that gets me the most excited. I do like freeze effects, having it kind of preloaded up on demand. But then I also wanted to talk about the quest side of things, because I don't know, maybe I'm just trying to think of an archetype here that they're building around. None of these really go that well together, but cheap locations are really good again for Quest Druid, and I think actually a stall effect as well, kind of like that freeze we talked about, is also really good for Quest Druid, because I think that deck hits its power band in the mid game. You want to make sure you're not too dead, or that your opponent's not too effective at like trading into your stuff. You just kind of want to buy time to get those boards filled out. So cheap location's really good at occupying that slot sort of permanently until you want to turn it off. So that's really nice. And then I think the stall aspect of this also could be kind of helpful on top of that. And, you know, even if I think about other cards too, I don't know, Wicker Fang or something, right? Like you could give your Wicker Fang taunt to protect his legs or whatever, right? There are even some angles there too that make sense. So, you know, I'm definitely forcing that synergy idea a little bit, but I'm just like trying to think about, you know, their plans here for this class set. Maybe I'm thinking too much, because I don't know if there are any plans, but it'd be nice to think, you know, this is at least an option there for a Quest Druid deck again. So this card leaves me really flummoxed, because I kind of see it, I kind of get it, and I want to root for that because there's like a lot of creative use cases here. At the same time, I just think people are gonna be like, not worth it, and cut it from their deck list. So I don't know. I don't think it gets there. All right, so all that said, let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Bashana Rune Totem is a 3-star card. Wizened Wild Speaker is a 4-star card. Heartroot Stones is a 4-star card. Life Bloom is a 2-star card. Seeding Dragon is a 3-star card. Ashworm is a 4-star card. Tranquil Clearing is a 3-star card. Yeah, I mean, I think a bit of a mixed bag here for Druid, but some, like, you know, I think some solid pieces to work with and a few fringe things that, yeah, I don't really think are going to move the needle much, but yeah, it could pop into a deck list basically here and there. And then Ashworm really just lives and dies by the success of Quest Druid. If you think there's enough for this deck to get there, this is a good card. If not, not a good card. So kind of have to take a flyer on that one. But ultimately, yeah, no, some stuff to do. I like that there's stuff to do here. I'm torn on whether I prefer a mixed bag set like this or an all-in archetype set like the other ones we've seen so far, because in some ways, like, yes, those have a higher chance to like make an impact, but at the same time, if they fail, every card is dead. You know what I mean? Like the animal companion stuff, if it doesn't work, it's just no one will ever see those cards again. Same thing with the ley lines or whatever in Mage, Silverhand Recruits in Paladin. It's like you just won't ever see those cards again unless, you know, they go back and buff them or further support down the road or whatever. They just die. Whereas with this set, at least some of these cards have a chance to live on their own, right? And even if 5 die, maybe 2 see play or whatever, and then, you know, you get some value out of it. So I'm torn, but there's also a chance that these don't really change anything at all about Hearthstone or like update the meta or game in any way. So it's like, if you think about it from a value standpoint or from a disruption standpoint, and then which do you prefer? I don't know. It's probably up to the individual buyer. But anyway, a little something different for Druid here. So share your thoughts on all these cards down below. Thanks so much as always for watching. And until next time, game on.